Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, the setting for a new novel is a communal society founded by freed people in North Carolina. It was a real place called the Kingdom of the Happy Land.
Every nook and cranny of this country has a story worth sharing and telling.
When a West Virginia pastor got assigned to a new church, some folks tried to warn him.
Oh, you're going to the egg church. Didn't matter who I was talking to. Oh, you're going to the egg church. And I said, okay, well, that'll be interesting. And then, oh, you're not ready.
And the online world of Appalachian memes. And what they tell us about folks who live here.
I always say that these characters are an archetype and they're an amalgamation of multiple people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be funny because it wouldn't be relatable. And I think they take off because they're lovable people.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Following the Civil War, a group of freed people fled violence and bought land in western North Carolina. In the summer of 1873, these people formed a black communal society they named the Kingdom of the Happy Land. A new novel tells of stories set in the kingdom, both in the past and in the present day. It's titled Happy Land. I spoke with its author, Dolan Perkins Valdez. Happy Land is a book that speaks to us now in the present day, but it's framed in the history after the Civil War of a black kingdom in North Carolina. Do you recall the first time you heard about the Kingdom of the Happy Land?
Yes, although I don't know exactly what article it is that I read. It was during the pandemic, and my pandemic hobby was teaching myself the banjo. So I was looking up Western North Carolina old-time musicians, and I stumbled on this story about this kingdom, which was really too incredible to believe. And that was my first time hearing about it. And then I reached out to a man in Hendersonville, North Carolina, a librarian by the name of Ronnie Pepper, and he told me, yes, it's true.
I think I can recall hearing references to this before, but I didn't know that much about it before I read your book. Do you mind sharing the story of the kingdom and how it came to be and kind of its arc?
In 1873, a group of about 50 people walked up the mountain from South Carolina. They were from a little town called Cross Anchor, South Carolina, in Spartanburg County. They were fleeing Klan violence and trying to start over and make a new life. They had been freed. They had lived in South Carolina, and they were now freed people. And we believe they were members of the same church. They went up that mountain. They made a deal with a woman by the name of Sarepta Davis, who owned an inn that was located on the turnpike. She was a widow, and she owned all this acreage, and she had these old slave quarters that nobody was living in anymore. These folks made a deal with her that they would help her in exchange for living in the old quarters. And that is how the kingdom was begun. They established a community there. They called it the Kingdom of the Happy Land, and they called themselves royalty.
After they established it and purchased that land, the story you tell shares kind of the family members and then their descendants. There's two narrative threads going on at the same time. Can you chart out what that sort of looked like in the Kingdom of the Happy Land in North Carolina and what's become of it today?
Well, of course, there are kingdom descendants. There are known kingdom descendants, but my contemporary character, Nikki, is a complete fictional imagining of a descendant. Because the question I had was, why does this history still matter? What do we lose when we don't know our history? And Nikki is my exploration of that question. She's a contemporary person. She's almost 40 years old. She's never even visited her grandmother in Western North Carolina, and she goes there for the first time at the beginning of the book. She goes and learns about this kingdom and thinks her grandmother is just making it up. And soon she'll learn that it's indeed true, and it'll change her life forever. So that's the question I'm asking. What does it mean for us to know our history? And what do we lose when we don't know it?
Would you mind reading an excerpt?
Sure. 78 years old, and she can outwalk me. When we reach the line of trees, she uses her stick to beat back the brush, beckoning for me to follow. Finally, she stops at a small clearing and points to several mounds of carefully stacked rocks around the base of a tree. I've seen these kinds of stacked rocks in a movie once. I think they're tributes to the dead. They look old and worn. Are these graves, Mother Rita? I ask. These are my parents, she says. I squat to look. What do you mean, tributes to your parents? Or are they buried? Yes, this is where they're buried, she says. I stand up and take a few steps back, suddenly afraid I'm standing right on top of their graves. There's no tombstone, no etching of names, nothing. Sparse shoots of grass have long ago grown over the dirt. I look around. There are mounds of rocks everywhere I turn. Mother Rita, what is this place? Baby girl, she says, this is your family graveyard, and one day I want you to bury me in it.
The story you tell in Happy Land is one that was mirrored across the South in the years following the Civil War and Reconstruction, where formerly enslaved people, freedmen and women, purchased land and built a community, but were then dispossessed of the land, often through unethical or even illegal means. How did that shape Black communities and families across the South?
Well, I knew that if I talked about this communal living experiment in North Carolina, I needed to engage that tremendous land loss that happened over the course of the 20th century. Often when we think about the era of Reconstruction in American history books, specifically for Black people, we often talk about lynching or we talk about sharecropping, in which someone lived on someone else's land and farmed. But we don't talk about the many millions of Black folks who were scrambling to try to buy their own land. They understood that land ownership was not only the vehicle to a more prosperous future, but it was also a vehicle to the full rights of citizenship. And when they lost that land, like you say, due to unethical and nefarious forces, they lost a lot. There was a lot lost. And I thought, if I'm going to talk about the kingdom, I have to talk about that too. And, one, of course, they lost their wealth, right? And land loss is the number one factor contributing to the disproportionate number of impoverished Black folks in this country. And secondly, I thought, well, okay, not only did we lose out financially, we also lost a gathering space for our kinfolk. We lost, our connection to rural life and folkways. And I'm hopeful that one of the things this book will remind us to do is to get back in touch with our rural and country ancestral connection.
What do you feel like the history of the Kingdom of Happy Land has to tell us about the world today?
Well, one of the things it reminds me is the importance of community. These folks really leaned on each other during this difficult period, and they pooled their resources together. They, created a self-sustaining community that really inspires me. They were ambitious, they were industrious, they were all of these things. And I think today, one of the things that worries me is that our communities feel so divided. And I feel like what we can learn from the kingdom is that we're stronger when we are together and when we bond together and when we lean on each other. That's always been true of us as a nation. And I think that's true of us as global people too, right? That we do best when we think of our fellow human being as, a member of our community.
Do you have wisdom that you took away from this experience that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think the wisdom is that Every nook and cranny of this country has a story worth sharing and telling. Every hill, every valley, everybody knows some family story or something about their community that is remarkable. And I don't think we should dismiss those stories. We should celebrate them. We should share them. And I hope if I've done one little thing with this book, I've shined a light on Henderson County, which is just a wonderful, beautiful place in Western North Carolina. And I hope that people will visit, and if they do, that they will love that place as much as I do.
I love that answer. That speaks directly to the heart of this show. And I appreciate you talking about that. The nook and cranny stuff is so great.
I think when people lost the land, they lost their connection to the outdoors. I think we have, a world now where everybody's on their screens all the time, or if anybody has teenagers like I do, they have AirPods in their ears all the time and they never hear what I'm saying. And I don't know that they have the AirPod in, so I think they're ignoring me. But I think that we really need to put all of our electronics down and just get outside. Somebody asked me recently, well, where do you like to go in DC? And, where do you go camping and all of this? And I said, well, it doesn't have to be that complicated. I just keep a folding chair in the trunk of my car. And sometimes I'll just pull over and take that chair out and sit. Like it doesn't have to be planned. You don't have to pack a snack. You don't have to, have a water bottle. You could just keep a folding chair in the back of your car. And whenever you see a sky that looks really pretty, if there's somewhere to park, just pull over and pull that chair out and sit and look at the sky.
I'm going to go put a folding chair in my car.
You should. You should. And I'm going to tell you something. People take my chair. Sometimes I look in my trunk and it's not there because my husband took it or my kids took it. Like, once people see that I do that, they'll like borrow my chair and then it's not there when I need it. It's an amazing feeling to do it. Just out of the blue, just like, especially when you're feeling stressed, just pull over, take that chair out.
Dolan Perkins Valdez, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dolan Perkins Valdez is the author of Happy Land. The book is available from Penguin Random House. You can learn more about the historic kingdom of the Happy Land in a website Perkins Valdez helped build. We'll link it on our website, wvpublic.org. Songbirds are especially active this time of year, migrating north and singing to attract mates. It's a great time for birding. And in Virginia, there's a new birding trail along the New River. Radio IQ's Roxy Todd went to check it out.
Next to a picnic table, New River Trail Park Ranger Aaron Pitts points at a birdhouse where a small bird is bringing nesting supplies.
Is that a bluebird? I think that's a bluebird in the bluebird box.
We're just outside the small town of Ivanhoe, in view of the river and the biking trail. More than 100 different bird species can be found here.
Hearing a lot of cardinals and finches right now. A lot of sparrows and wrens. I see the cardinal over there. Their color just pops.
We walk slowly, meditatively, listening and watching.
I think a lot of visitors just find the calming effects of not only being out in nature, but just being present in nature. And it's just a unique way to view and appreciate wildlife.
A blackbird with a white and burnt orange breast lands on a branch nearby.
That's pretty neat. An eastern towhee that we just saw, and it was maybe 8 feet in front of us.
The trail meanders along 2.5 miles of meadow and forested floodplain. This part of the trail was completely upended last year when Hurricane Helene dumped sand and mud along the entire shoreline.
You can see all of the trees that have just been completely knocked over by the force of the river and the water over here. The landscape has changed so much.
Now, sandy beaches line the river's edge. For the last 6 months, volunteers and park employees from across Virginia helped Pitts and her crew remove trash and debris from the new river. Tires, sheets of metal, and vinyl siding from homes. Beside us, a muddy rug is still buried in the sand.
Lots of volunteer efforts and lots of hands have helped make this birding trail clean and pristine, and the work still continues. I mean, there's still so much shoreline that we have to clean up, but this looks a lot better than it did before.
They recently reopened all sections of the trail that were damaged during Helene.
We've been able to open our campsites back up, and our trails are open back up now. I think that's something to be celebrated for sure.
We leave the beach and head to the gravel bike trail and walk along a bridge that crosses the river. A man and a woman are riding a tandem bicycle, and more riders appear.
Coming up on your left.
Good morning.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
Good, thank you. How are
Good.
you?
Sometimes hawks, eagles, and geese can be spotted from this bridge. Today, we spy a handful of tires beneath the clear water. At the water's edge, we also see prints from a raccoon that's probably been scrounging for food in the night. There is cell phone reception here, but no Wi-Fi. There are interpretive signs and a free library with birding guides.
In modern ages, most people are reliant on their phones, but sometimes a trail guide just does the trick.
Phones do have some uses for birders. Citizen scientists can document their sightings using an app called eBird. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology has an app called Merlin that helps identify birds by sound. But to learn without a phone, Pitt says it might be useful to connect with a birding club, which exists in many communities. State parks like New River Trail also host guided hikes throughout the year. If you want to bring a group to the Ivanhoe Birding Trail for a guided walk, Pitt says visitors can call the New River Trail State Park to set up a time. This trail is located a little over a mile walk or bike ride from the Ivanhoe parking area. Visitors with mobility limitations can get permission from the state park to use a golf cart. In Ivanhoe, I'm Roxy Todd.
Morning.
Hey, morning. Enjoy your ride.
Thank you. Hey. Hello.
Birders also might catch sight of another migrating species, the monarch butterfly, whose distinctive orange and black coloration make it instantly identifiable. But the monarch's numbers have dropped in recent years. Now, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is looking to classify the monarch butterfly as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. The Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom's Riley Thompson spoke with experts about threats to the species and what you can do to help.
Why I do what I do.
Chris Light is a science educator at the American Museum of Science and Energy in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. She says she's always had an affinity for bugs.
Actually, the front license plate on my car is monarch. I used to have one that said bug lady. I taught a lot of insect classes. The kids call me the bug lady.
Light started raising monarch butterflies when she found one outside her child's classroom 30 years ago.
We had one time, there was a hurricane where my parents lived, and we had to go down there and help them clean them up. Well, I had a chrysalis, and I told my husband, I said, we're going to have to take his chrysalis with us.
Monarch butterflies play an integral role in our ecosystem. They're pollinators. They help breed our flowers, grow our food, and they serve as a food source for other species like lizards and birds. But monarch populations are declining. They occupied only 2 acres of land during their hibernation in Mexico in 2024.
Any organism that you lose is a loss, which can affect other things down the line.
Their population did see an increase from 2024 to 2025, with nearly double the acreage being occupied during hibernation. But experts aren't sure if those numbers will continue to rise next year. To help address the issue, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued a proposal in December to label the monarchs as threatened, offering them certain protections under the Endangered Species Act. The department reopened the public comment period this spring to determine what those protections should include. Kristen Lund is the Endangered Species Act coordinator for monarch butterflies.
So we'll get comments for and against lots of different things in the rule, and we'll have to base our final review and any changes we make to it on the best scientific literature that we get and the best commercial information that we get. And so it'll all be balanced to represent what we think is best for the species.
The public comment period will remain open until May 19th. In the meantime, experts say there are other ways people can help the monarch butterfly. One is to provide support for their months-long journey from Mexico to Canada. Now the temperatures are warming up, monarchs are migrating north, passing through parts of the Midwest and South along the way. Steve McGaffin is the director of the Tennessee Butterfly Monitoring Network at Zoo Knoxville. He says they'll need lots of nectaring flowers to eat and milkweed to lay eggs on.
They're planting milkweed that will be out in the spring and the summer is what will help them the most. You still need the nectar plants because they need fuel. The adults don't eat leaves. The adults only drink nectar.
McGaffin says public participation in species conservation isn't always possible, but for pollinators it can be.
I'm not going to go to the Malay Peninsula and go save tigers. I don't have that experience and I don't have that knowledge and probably don't have the money. But I can go into my backyard or in my front yard and plant native plants that will attract pollinators and provide habitat for pollinators.
Now is a great time to plant milkweed in your garden as monarchs begin making their way through states including Tennessee, Kentucky, and North Carolina on their path to Canada. For the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, I'm Riley Thompson.
Coming up, a Methodist church in West Virginia is known as the Egg Church. We'll have the story of a decades-long tradition that gives it that name. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, offering 31 bachelor-level degrees and 6 master-level degrees for students of any age. More information at concord.edu.
Even though Easter is past, you might still be able to find leftover Easter candy. What you probably won't find are those big chocolate Easter eggs local churches sell right before the holiday. One church in West Virginia has become known far and wide for its chocolate eggs. Zach Harold, reporting for the Rural Remix podcast, brings us this story.
When Pastor John Langenstein found out he had been assigned to Northview United Methodist Church in Clarksburg, West Virginia, everyone he talked to had the same response.
Oh, you're going to the egg church. Didn't matter who I was talking to. Oh, you're going to the egg church. And I said, okay, well, that'll be interesting. And then, oh, you're not ready.
John knew all about hard-boiled Easter eggs and plastic Easter eggs and the candy versions from Cadbury and Reese's. But the eggs for which Northview was famous were something much more special. Shiny chocolate Easter eggs decorated with delicate sugar flower petals, available in 3 generous sizes and 6 flavors: coconut, cherry nut, maple nut, solid chocolate, peanut butter, and Butterfinger. Every single one is handmade in Northview's basement, just like they have been for nearly 3 decades. And while Pastor John might run the show upstairs in the sanctuary, down here, he's just another volunteer. The kitchen is Serena Ashcraft's domain.
The molds are double-coated. Yep, and ready to go. We'll put filling in them. And we're doing maple nut this morning.
Serena and fellow member Janet Shanholz run the Egg Brigade. Serena in the daytime, Janet with the evening crew. Together, they order supplies, organize sales, and manage 5 shifts of volunteers each week.
We do a Monday, Tuesday, morning and evening, and then a Saturday.
That's necessary because of the huge quantity of eggs Northview cranks out in a typical year.
Oh my gosh, Nadine, how many do we make?
Oh, it's between 6,000 and 8,000.
Yeah.
That's Nadine Holt, you heard in the background. She's in charge of mixing the fillings for those 6,000 to 8,000 eggs.
She's 84 years old.
87!
87? Oh my gosh, that even makes it more awesome.
Nadine has held this job since the very first Easter egg sale at Northview in 1997.
The people are dead now that I started with, and they just said, we're going to do Easter eggs. They you want to help? And I said, sure. Here I am.
The origins of the church-made chocolate Easter egg are kind of hazy, But these delicacies appear to have first shown up in the mid-20th century in central Pennsylvania. Today, the eggs seem to be largely a central Appalachian phenomenon, showing up in Pennsylvania as well as Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, and, of course, West Virginia. The history of Northview's eggs is easier to track. In the late 90s, church member Ruth Jamote helped out with an egg fundraiser at nearby Bridgeport High School, which gave Northview's pastor at the time an idea.
And he said, you could do that for the church too, couldn't you? And so the recipes were copied down. These are the same recipes we've been using for 26 years.
The church did add a new flavor a few years into the sale, and it's now a customer favorite. Butterfinger eggs.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised what it is. It's peanut butter and candy corn melted. Candy corn melted in the microwave and peanut butter.
The day after Halloween, we get a call from Serena, and she says, y'all better be out there. It's $1 today for a big bag, and we get all we can.
The recipes are typed out on a well-worn, stained sheet of copy paper. But Nadine doesn't need that. She knows all the recipes by heart, like the maple nut filling she's making today in her well-worn KitchenAid stand mixer.
2 sticks of oleo, a half a cup of water, and 4 teaspoons of maple flavoring, and 2 cups of chopped walnuts. Now I chopped all these nuts at home because we don't have time to chop them here and work.
Nadine makes sure the doughy filling is the perfect consistency. Not too sticky, not too dry.
See how it sort of winds up around the beater? It's pretty well much ready to come off.
Once the filling is ready, volunteers will ball it up and stuff it into the chocolate-coated egg molds. After the eggs are filled, they get one final layer of melted chocolate across the bottom to seal everything up. It looks easy, but the folks at Northview say this is actually the trickiest part of the whole process. Too little coating, and the filling will dry out and get crumbly. Too much on the bottom, and the egg will be difficult to remove from the mold, potentially ruining the whole thing. To do it right takes lots of practice, a steady hand, and the help of a secret weapon. Northview's collection of vintage 1970s hot plates.
So these pictures are from the 1997 season, I think. And you can see the exact same hot plates being used there.
Except they still had
still had paint at the time. Without trying, when this fundraiser was put together, these hot plates keep it at the temperature where the chocolate tempers.
Tempering is a delicate process where chocolate is heated to right around 110 degrees Fahrenheit before cooling. This stabilizes the crystals in the cocoa butter, creating that shiny, smooth, and shelf-stable look that you see in commercially made candies.
We've just not found anything as good as these 1970 whatever hot plates.
Now stuffed and coated, the eggs go into a freezer to set up. After 20 to 30 minutes, they're ready to come out and receive the finishing touch. A tiny handmade flour made from egg whites and more powdered sugar. Church member Andrea Foselair makes them at home on wax paper.
She starts before Christmas on these.
She had 6,000 different flours ready by the end of the year, and then she's probably going to make another 1,000 before we're done.
Completed eggs go just across the hall to a storage room.
Yeah, let's take you to the egg room. Yeah. This is a sacred spot, locked up all year just in preparation for when it can be filled. So we have 5 shelves here. They will all be filled completely by the end of the season.
This is where the eggs get packaged and labeled, ready to go to local beauty parlors, tire shops, and car dealerships. These local small businesses sell the eggs and collect the money for the church. $3 for babies, which are about the size of a Reese's egg, $7 for a half-pound medium egg, and $9 for a full-pound large egg, which looks like something a chocolate emu might lay. Northview also sets up its own sales around town.
We go to the courthouse, the mall.
They set us up last year they set us up down by Hallmark, and Hallmark didn't want us down there because we were competition to them.
They put us next to the Easter Bunny, which was the best place we could have possibly been.
And Northview eggs are renowned well beyond the Clarksburg area.
I'll go to a meeting, for something up in Wheeling or down in Charleston, and somebody will say, "Oh, is it egg season? Medium cherry nut, small coconut. Make the medium a white chocolate. I want milk chocolate for the other." I mean, people are ready. They have their order. Sometimes before they say hello, "Here's my order. Go and get it in."
The church also ships eggs all across the country. The sale generates tens of thousands of dollars for the congregation each year, money they've used to purchase everything from new carpet to a new organ. But Pastor John says the biggest benefit of Northview's annual egg campaign is the way it brings his congregation together.
Yeah, Easter is a long season here. And this, one of the best parts of this whole process, other than the fact that, obviously it helps support the work of the church, is it's just fun. For as much work as it is and as much as a taskmaster Serena can be, we get,
We laugh, we joke. Yeah.
We got people from, all generations coming in. Last year, our youngest person helping out with eggs was 6 years old. And our oldest was, I think you win that, Nadine, 87.
I'm sure Pastor John.
That's the kind of legacy that will outlive even a 1970s hot plate.
That was Zach Harold, reporting for the Rural Remix podcast from the Center for Rural Strategies. Appalachian humor is often presented as a throwback. Think old-timers sitting around telling tall tales. Lots of moonshine jokes. Thing is, there's plenty of modern mountain humor. It's on the internet. Last year, Folkways reporter Madeline Miller brought us this story about two artists who've taken holler humor to the digital realm.
Scrolling through Andy Marie Tillman's TikTok is like hanging out at a family reunion. Her sketches feature all kinds of characters, like Papaw, who's always piddling in the garage and telling silly jokes.
I want you to look here at this new pup. They done learned this thing how to play hide and go seek. Name it Dog, I guess. I mean, I ain't got time to go naming everything I got. Come on.
There's Aunt Pam, who Andy Marie describes as the black hole purse lady. She's the one who passes out snacks from her bag at church.
That's good singing. Here, she's wanting gum too. Here, pass it down. Nope, you don't need a whole piece. God won't be able to hear you with all that gum in your mouth.
And then there's the character who Andy Marie calls her heavily medicated aunt, who's usually trying to make you a casserole.
How's your mom doing? She's not doing good, is she, hon? I hate to hear that, but I could make y'all a casserole. You know, your mom used to love my chili. But I don't make that.
Andy Marie is a content creator and humorist from Eastern Tennessee who currently lives in Nashville. She's a self-described silly person who's dabbled in just about every area of the performing arts, including music. She started doing these impressions on stage in between her songs. At first, when people told her she should be a comedian, she was sad that they weren't as moved by her music. But then she realized that they might be onto something.
People have always told me that I need to put some of my characters online, and I didn't even know about TikTok. And I really just did it for funsies one day. And then my Papaw character really took off.
Over the years, Andy Marie has gained quite the social media following, with almost 500,000 followers across all her platforms. Characters like Papaw and Aunt Pam are fan favorites for a reason.
I always say that these characters are an archetype, and they're an amalgamation of multiple people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be funny because it wouldn't be relatable. And I think they take off because they're lovable people.
With such a large following, it's clear her characters are relatable, especially when they remind fans of their own loved ones. In fact, some of Andy Marie's sketches have even helped people through difficult times in life.
When people tell me that it helped them through like bereavement period after someone died, that's when it feels real. Because a lot of times it doesn't feel real, and I don't know that I'm doing anything because I'm being so silly. You know, I'm like, this can't possibly be, this is dumb. This can't possibly be worth anything. But when somebody tells me it helped them through grief, that's when it feels real.
Andy Marie isn't the only one portraying life in Appalachia in the digital realm. So is another creator who goes by the name Little Bubby Child. Under the alias of Bubby Wade, they create cartoon vignettes of people you might run into in eastern Kentucky where they live. With their chicken scratch art style and use of local dialect, Little Bubby Child's memes bring rural Kentucky to life. Typically, the memes don't include sound, but on occasion they voice a meme, like in this one, where Bubby Wade tells his dad about a kid he met at school.
Hey, Dad, guess what? What? There's a boy in my class called Michael. Said his parents named him after Michael Jordan because he could jump so high. That's plumb wild, ain't it? Well, what'd they do, just call him baby till he's old enough to jump? He lied to me.
Bubby's real identity is a secret, and while I wasn't able to speak with the person behind the memes, I was able to speak with Dr. Sarah Craycraft. Sarah's a lecturer of folklore and mythology at Harvard University and a big Little Bubby Child fan. Sarah's from Appalachian, Ohio, and she came across Little Bubby Child when her sister sent her the memes.
I think, if you're in Appalachian circles, it's inevitable to come across Little Bubby Child.
Inevitable because Little Bubby Child is very popular, with nearly 500,000 Instagram followers. The memes reference all kinds of things that resonate with fans, from potted meats and Marilyn Manson to Beanie Babies and dollar stores.
Some gal uptown asked me what's the difference between Family Dollar and the Dollar Tree. I said, "Law, honey, if you don't already know, I sure can't explain to you."
Sarah says that what she likes so much about Little Bubby Child is that the memes reflect a version of her childhood and family stories that feels genuine.
It felt like a genuine sense of home and a celebration of making do and just the silly people in our hometowns that we know and love, but that aren't seen maybe or talked about or celebrated or recognized in ways that are kind and caring. So instead of being tropes, it just becomes this is a social world that you're a part of and that's familiar to you.
Sarah recently lectured on Little Bubby Child in one of her classes at Harvard as a way to talk about the importance of dialect. She says that it wasn't just the students from Appalachia who resonated with Little Bubby Child. Those with ties to rural places outside of Appalachia also felt a connection to the memes.
It was an interesting kind of realization for us that what we think of as Appalachia maybe is a rural experience. What we think of as very local is maybe not as local as it seems. Maybe the picture of mainstream America should shift to reflect this a little bit more than other kinds of Americanness or ways of being American.
There was one Little Bubby Child character in particular that sparked a lot of conversation about what it means to be Appalachian, the Goth Brother.
We named our black metal band the Awfulest Mess Ever Was, because that's what my papa calls everything I like.
The Goth Brother is Bubby's older and more alternative brother. His spiky black hair and face piercings perfectly complement Bubby's red mullet. The Goth Brother loves online fantasy games and his son, Goro.
So in some ways it was like affirming of tropes or stereotypes or things that people might associate with the region, but in other ways it was like blowing open some of the ideas of who lives in Appalachia.
In her class, Sarah and her students discussed how to classify Bubby's content. She explained that Bubby's jokes fit into a lineage of Appalachian humor.
I do think there is a lovely, rich culture of humor in Appalachia, and a lot of it is just clever, insightful observations of everyday life. It is people making humor out of the stories all around them.
Bubby's memes do sound like jokes that you'd hear just out and about in Appalachia or talking with your friends and family. That's one of the reasons that people in the region send them to those who aren't in the area anymore.
Sometimes the humor can also open up and connect the diaspora, people who have relationships to the region, people who have had to leave and miss home. And I think, the big part of why Little Bubby Child and Andy Marie Tillman's content resonates is that it reaches beyond the small community. It lets people connect outside of regional boundaries.
And that's why there's such a great way to remember your loved ones and let them know that you're thinking of them.
I love you, and I miss you, and I'm thinking about you every day and night.
I love you too, Mama.
I love you, honey. I really do.
Well, I appreciate that.
Every day and night. Every day and night.
For Inside Appalachia, I'm Madeline Miller.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. You can find more Folkways stories at our website, wvpublic.org. Knoxville, Tennessee's Big Ears Festival has become a high-profile platform for regional artists to debut new works. This year's festival featured the premiere of The Mockingbird, a collaboration between composer William Wright and Tennessee writer, musician, and playwright R.B. Morris. The Mockingbird features Morris reading his poetry, while accompanied by an experimental chamber orchestra. Morris was Knoxville's first ever poet laureate, and his songs have been recorded by John Prine and Mary Ann Faithfull. Inside Appalachia producer Bill Lynch spoke with Morris about his collaborations and his ability to capture a sense of place.
Would you like to read something? Do you have anything to read?
I could think of something, I believe. I'm thinking suddenly of, it was last July, I think, maybe, or the July before. I got a call one night from a local booker here, Ashley Capps, AC Entertainment. They do the Big Ears Festival, and he's been the originator of Bonnaroo and a bunch of other things. And he called me one day and said, RB, you want to do a reading tomorrow with Yo-Yo Ma? I said, what now? He said, he's looking for a poet to do a reading with a pop-up concert. I said, okay. And he had a big show that weekend here on the World's Fair site. I think 5,000 people came to. But he likes to come into town and ahead of time at some of his concerts and do a pop-up concert, and where he just shows up somewhere. And Ashley said to me, well, you can't tell anybody about it. It's just tomorrow. And if too many people know about it, he'll cancel. He won't do it. I said, okay. So anyway, it was taking place at the Lake Shore Park. It's an elevated park above the river and the mountains. And he said, that's where it's happening. And I said, okay, I think I got a poem that'll fit that location. The poem is called Paradise. Don't you realize this is paradise? This is now, where it all began. It's true, the axis has shifted so often, it's hard to see or believe your eyes. We are bewildered in time. But consider this. We do know that yonder Smoky Mountains are among the very oldest in the world. The original red volcanoes, now 40 shades of green, have seen the sea curl its long arm around the steaming ground and crack and cough up life. Here on this hill, it all began. A garden, and still more wildflowers than anywhere on earth, unless the young Amazon has purchased a new bouquet or two with all her free greenhouse time. The original poem lies here in the rise and fall flow of East Tennessee, a water closet kept secret where God crawled up and took seed. It is the mother mountains whose breast we hold in view, a blue ridge to the common eye. There from the corners of the devil's cradle, a split tongue rolled down, spewed forth, and flowed with all its many mouths to feed, carrying the seed into the great circle, the French Broad spreading beneath the Holston, begetting the one, the Tennessee. Here near the river, between two streams, time stood still long enough to swallow its tail and rear its head inside a dream. That's it.
No, I was just thinking there for a second. That's one of the most Appalachian poems I think I've heard in a while. Conjures mountains and rivers and talks about place. Tell me a little about the poem and where were you mentally when you wrote it, I guess?
The poem comes from a book Iris Press published called Early Fires. That poem actually goes on in the book a little further and has to do with the local city scene, but I didn't think that was so appropriate to continue into it when I was doing that with Yo-Yo Ma, so I since kind of shortened it, and it's very much about East Tennessee. The poem itself is basically saying that now is it, and that, the world began here, more or less. That's a sort of the Black Elk approach, I guess. This is the center of the world, or whatever, where we are. But that was what I came from. They often talk about the Smoky Mountains being some of the oldest mountains in the world, and the New River up your way being one of the oldest rivers in the world and running in a different direction and all that. So I was just playing upon that, I guess, and reaching back and trying to gather it is all.
Well, your career spans all kinds of things. You have poetry, music, theater. So what came first for you? Were you a musician to begin with, or a poet, or a writer, an actor?
I kind of like to say I've been avoiding careers all my life, basically, but I've been involved in a lot of things. I've always been fascinated with words and with music. I guess I first started singing when I was a kid in church. That was the first time, that people would sing together, and you would learn songs later in school also. But that's where I first got into it, singing. And I think it's a natural thing for people to sing. And so it just, it grew from there.
We talk a lot about place, and place kind of figures in the poem you just did. What's the best part about where you live?
Well, it's hard not to like East Tennessee weather-wise. You have 4 distinct seasons here. You could probably say 8. You have your blackberry winter and so forth, all that. East Tennessee is a beautiful place. Nature is rich here, and it's an influence on your day-to-day lives. And, place is important. I mean, obviously, traditionally, place is a huge theme, that and childhood. And I'm pretty much wrapped up in this area in a lot of ways. So it's a big influence. I mean, I'll say that.
Let me ask about the collaboration you did in March during Big Ears with William Wright and the Mockingbird.
I wrote a book of poetry, the Mockingbird Poems. I think it came out in about 2012 or 2013. Those poems most of them, had been around for a little while. I'd actually, playing in various bands, I would occasionally, go off on some spoken word with the band accompanying me. And the Mockingbird poems had always been a favorite collection to use for that before they were ever a book, just because they weren't obtuse or hard to follow. They were easy, and I could suddenly move into a poem without an audience knowing you're fixing to do that or anything. And the musicians may give a little bit of ambiance around it, and suddenly we would be into this poem and out of the poem and into a song. And it would flow like any song or anything else would in a show. I had a few friends often saying, you should collect these poems and put them into a book. And so then there was a book, the Mockingbird Poems. Will Wright, who is located here in Knoxville now, he's a young prodigy. He's had a little band or two. He's done all kinds of projects. But he's a recent graduate of the Berklee School of Music in Boston, studying symphonic composition. He and I were talking one day, having lunch. He had said to me one time he'd really like to work with me on something. And we didn't know what, but we said maybe something will come up and we'll figure it out or whatever. So we were just talking over lunch, and I was telling him some ideas for works that I had. And let's just say we came upon the idea that he would like to create a symphony for the Mockingbird poems, for the book. So from that, we began really just to talk about it more at first, sort of shape it in the air. And we did that until we had a chance to really focus on it more. And he created this symphony around the poetry. He wanted to do the entire book straight out, which was, I love the idea. But I did pull out about 8 of the poems. I think there's 30-something in all. And just to make it flow a little better, some poems seemed to belong more on the page. So anyway, we shaped it, brought it together, thanks to Ashley Capps again, and who did the big ears. We had a place to premiere it, and so that's how it more or less came about. And William gathered the musicians for the most part. I have a little combo I play with occasionally, just a cello player, a second guitarist who doubles on fiddle and steel guitar and other things, and a drummer. And so they were part of the combo that had about 14 musicians, I think, and 3 choral singers and a conductor, and that was the setup for The Mockingbird. We performed it at St. John's Cathedral here in Knoxville.
That was writer and musician R.B. Morris speaking with Bill Lynch. Morris is working on a number of projects, including another book of poetry and a book about Pulitzer Prize-winning author James Agee. Agee wrote A Death in the Family and was from Knoxville. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Jeff Ellis, Hello June, Joe Dobbs and the 1937 Flood, John Ingram, John Blissard, and Blue Dot Sessions. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Clara Hazlett. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, educating the people of our region and beyond for more than 150 years. More information at concord.edu.